Hello and welcome to Direct Snap, coming to you, surprise, surprise, at our regularly scheduled time. This time we actually made a show on Wednesday, so I'll give myself a little pat on the back. A lot of Friday and Saturday shows recently, but what do you know? I thought I'd spice up a little bit and do it at the time I'm supposed to be doing it. It is week 15. I am your host, Connor Groel, and we're talking about the NFL with just 3 weeks left in the season. Playoff picture starting to take form. We got more teams clinching and wild card races really in both conferences, but especially the AFC. Really, really packed, really tight at the moment. A lot of the division winners are coming into focus, but as far as, those, especially the 6 seeds, because I think the 5 seeds in both conferences are pretty much locked up at this point. But as far as the 6 seeds go, in both the NFC and the AFC, we have, 5, 6 teams in contention. Which is, I don't know, I guess it's tough to get that kind of historical perspective, but it feels like it's tighter than usual. I don't know, maybe it's not, but we have a lot of teams, again, especially in the AFC. AFC really overperforming this year. Usually I feel like it's the NFC that's, the tougher conference, but we have a lot of teams in the NFC, like the Packers and the Falcons, and the Eagles, teams that are usually pretty good, that are Panthers as well, that have been struggling this season. And the AFC, we have, some surprise teams. The Colts have been better than expected, as have the Titans, and, the Ravens have been good. And the Dolphins somehow have 7 wins, and I don't think anybody would have predicted that. I think the Dolphins were my 32nd and final team in the power rankings, last place in my preseason edition. If not, I think they must have been 30 or 31, because I believe the AFC East, it was the Patriots somewhere in the top 5, and the rest of it was 30, 31, 32. And none of them are actually in the bottom 3 now, although the Jets and the Bills are still in the bottom quarter. But the Dolphins have definitely been a surprise this season. And again, the whole year they keep winning, and we keep thinking, but is this, are they legit? Are they not? And I think most people have probably thought that they aren't. But at this point in time, you're tied for the 6th seed, so I got to take them seriously, especially after what they were able to do last week against New England. Anytime anyone in the AFC East beats the Patriots, it's cause for some celebration and some recognition, because it takes a lot to beat the Patriots, especially when that division, Patriots feel like they go 5-1 or 6-0 just about every year for the last 2 decades. But I'm Connor Groel. Again, you can see my Twitter, Top Level Sports Twitter. You're on the Top Level Sports Facebook page if you're watching live. If not, if you're watching on YouTube, follow Top Level Sports on Facebook and Twitter. Once again, I'm Connor Groel. I've probably said that 3 times. But on this week's show, Direct Snap, our NFL talk show, we're going to start out talking about some headlines for this week, getting into the stats of the week, then power rankings and week 15 predictions. We've spiced up these segments a little bit over the course of the year, but pretty settled into this routine now, so we're going to get straight into it. And first thing to talk about, I mentioned it a bit earlier, obviously, the Dolphins beating the Patriots on that miracle final play. This was the longest game-winning touchdown on a final play in NFL history at 69 yards. Nice. And it resulted in a 34-33 Dolphins victory over the Patriots. So Dolphins come in trailing 33-28, and the Patriots had kicked a field goal, 30 seconds or so left in the game to bump it up to a 5-point lead. And the Dolphins, obviously they're on their own 31-yard line. And, you almost never see these, hook and ladder and these lateral plays and be very successful. It's kind of every now and again you see it in college, like with, Boise State against Oklahoma. And you see it, in backyard football and in lower levels of football where, the defenses aren't as tuned into this kind of thing. And it's, a lot easier to kind of pull off these kind of trick plays without that preparation. But this is the National Football League. And when you are in these situations where it's one play to win and you need a touchdown and it's, farther than a Hail Mary throw, because, when it's a 50, 55-yard Hail Mary or something like that. It still almost never works, but you do see it, I don't know, 3% of the time or something. But when it's farther than this, when you can't throw it there and you have to run one of these trick plays and, the lateral palooza, almost never ends up being successful. Which is, obviously why this is the longest final play that's ever worked in NFL history. But this one was. And it's interesting because the Steelers pulled off, it wasn't a similar, it didn't look similar, but it was another hook and ladder type play. And the Steelers were also very successful with it, setting themselves up with a field goal opportunity to send their game against Oakland into overtime. Although that one was blocked and the Raiders ended up winning that game. But on this one, a couple get the ball sent out to midfield, couple laterals. Kenyon Drake picks up the ball, and he's going to be the one that scores on the far sideline, starts to work his way in, thinks about a lateral. But then he realizes he's got some room out in front of him, and he can get a nice block. And Danny Amendola and another wide receiver up there, they're, making space, setting up blocks. And Kenyon Drake is off to the races. And the only guy that can stop him is the deep safety by the name of Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski in the game for the final play, but and by the way, Rob Gronkowski, man, he just looks like a robot playing. He looks like some kind of bionic human. He's just huge and he's all braced up. And he's just a massive guy. But he stumbles and he does not have the speed to get himself, back up quick enough and catch Kenyon Drake, and Drake sneaks into the end zone past him for a win on the final play. Again, 69 yards for the Dolphins. And not obviously, but this would have clinched the AFC East for the Patriots if they had won the game. But now technically it's still up in the air. They have a 2-game lead over Miami with 3 games to play. They're still going to win the division. But this does really save Miami's season as far as making the playoffs is concerned, because now they're in that huge group of teams at 7-6. And now we'll get into our second headline talking about this AFC wildcard race, because this is really interesting how this could play out. As far as the rest of it goes, the 5 seed in the AFC is locked in. It's going to be whoever loses the AFC West out of the Chiefs and the Chargers. Those 2 teams coming from the same division are the best teams in the AFC. Chiefs at 11-2 and Chargers at 10-3, and they play each other on Thursday Night Football this week. And the Chiefs can wrap up that division with a win, and if not, the Chargers now will work them way into a tie. I believe they're still behind on the tiebreak, but at least get themselves in a position where they can take that division and the number 1 overall seed that will go with it. Home field advantage throughout the playoffs. And what a story would be if the Chargers were that team. What a story really for the Chiefs as well, because at this point we're used to Pat Mahomes tearing it up. But we have to remember that, this is his first year as a starting quarterback, and it's unbelievable what he's been able to do. But so that's going to be the 1 and the 5 are going to be Chiefs and Chargers. And considering the Patriots and the Texans are tied in record 9-4, and the Patriots beat the Texans, Patriots are almost certainly going to be the 2, and the Texans are almost certainly going to be the 3. 4 seed is going to be the winner of the AFC North, currently being led by the Steelers at 7-5-1, but they've dropped 3 in a row, and their remaining schedule is brutal. They play the Patriots, and then I believe week 16 is the Rams. Or it's the Saints. They play the Patriots, then the Saints, and they finish off with the Bengals. So those first 2 games, and the Bengals, could give them trouble too, considering they're a divisional opponent. But those first 2 games especially are games that they're not going to be favored to win. And if the Steelers fall down to 7-1, I think I like the Ravens to win that division. And it's going to take, obviously, I think it's going to take 9 wins. And it definitely will take 9 wins unless something really weird happens to get that second wild card. So the Steelers are in a situation where they got 2 really tough games coming up, and they need to win 2 out of 3, I think, to make the playoffs. So the Steelers are in real trouble. But the Steelers are 7-5-1. The Ravens are 7-6. And in that pack, Ravens are 7-6, and tied / behind them, the Titans at 7-6, the Colts at 7-6, the Dolphins at 7-6. And even the Broncos as well at 6-7, they could run the table. It's going to be for them to do so. And I'm not sure where all the tiebreakers are because there are so many tiebreakers to consider now. But they can beat the Browns and they can beat the Raiders. The Chargers at home on week 17, they're going to definitely need that one. They've already beat the Chargers this season on the road. So it's possible. But I think this loss, and this was a really tough one, this should have been a gimme against the Niners, who entered this game with just 2 wins. But ultimately, I think the Broncos are probably out of it. Still potentially could make the playoffs, but I think they're probably out of it. And then it leaves us with this 4-team race at 7-6. And I think the Ravens are definitely the favorites for me. For me, though, I think the Ravens will win that division. And I think the Steelers will finish 8-7-1 outside of the playoffs, which means we need to find a second wild card team. And what I think it'll come down to, because I don't think it'll be the Dolphins, although we all got to root for the Dolphins, because if they make it and it's because of that final play, I mean, that's unbelievable. But I think it'll probably come down to this Week 17 matchup between the Colts and the Titans. AFC South teams, they're both 7-6. They both are playing each other in that final week of the season. Prior to that, both teams play the Giants. The Colts go Cowboys-Giants, and the Titans go Giants-Redskins. So the Titans have the easier schedule here, playing the Redskins instead of the Cowboys. So, it's tough because really all 40 – I expect the Titans to beat the Redskins, but that Colts-Giants and the Colts-Cowboys games and the Giants-Titans games, all 3 of those games could go either way. But there's a fair chance that both of these teams will go 1-1 out of it. And, actually, the Colts beat the Titans the first time. So let's see. If the Colts are a game behind the Titans and the Colts win that game, I think they should be able to have the tiebreaker. So really, I would say the Titans have the easier schedule the next 2 weeks. But if the Colts beat the Titans back-to-back, then the Colts will make it in. So really, I think pretty much regardless of what happens, so long as, the Titans aren't 2 games up on the Colts, which I don't think will happen, that really, I think, will come down to Week 17, and one of those teams will be 9-7, and the other team will probably be 8-8. And then I think the Broncos will probably finish at 7-9 or 8-8. And then when you look at the Dolphins and their schedule down the stretch, they have the Vikings on the road, which is a tough one, and they have the Jaguars and they have the Bills. And those are all winnable games. But I just don't think the Dolphins overall are as strong of a team. So the Dolphins, to me, they could finish with 7, 8, 9, or 10 wins. And obviously, if they finish with 10, they will make the playoffs. And if they finish with 9, we'll see where the tiebreakers fall. But they could. It's too early, and it's tough to say that with just 3 weeks left in the season. But it's a little too early, I think, as I take a sip of water there, to figure out what we have with all these tiebreakers, because a lot of it will come into, conference records, which we, aren't 100% sure of yet, and records against common opponents. And that's when some of these, Giants games, Cowboys games, whatever, might start to come into play, and records inside divisions and all these tiebreaker procedures. Head-to-heads as well. And until we know which teams are really going to be there at the end at that 9-7, it's tough to really forecast. But I think the most likely teams to be that second wild card for me, and of course the Steelers too, don't by any means call the Steelers out of it, but are the winner of the Colts-Titans Week 17 game and the Dolphins if they can get 2 wins. That's what I would say. NFC wildcard race is interesting as well. It's the Vikings currently cling on to the 6th seed at 6-6-1, but right behind them at 6-7 are the Panthers, Eagles, and Redskins. Although all of those teams are really, really struggling recently. And, the Panthers have lost 5 in a row. The Redskins have lost 3 in a row, and they're 2 quarterbacks. And the Eagles might be down Carson Wentz. And the Giants are there at 5-8, trying to be the spoiler, as are the Packers at 5-7-1. as are the Bucks at 5-8, but I really don't think the Bucks can do it. Thanks, Pop, for joining the show. It's tough for me as a Giants fan because seeing how weak the NFC is this season, this is really a year the Giants should be in the playoffs. They really, I think, are one of the top 6 most talented teams. And if you look at, they're 5-8, and the reason why it's so difficult for them to make the playoffs, well, first of all, they need to win out. But if they were at 6 or 7 wins, it'd be so much easier. And the problem is, even if they hit 8 wins, they need the Eagles and the Panthers, to finish at 7 and 9, because both of those teams have beat the Giants already and have, I believe, better conference records than the Giants do. Which is really a shame, because when you think of how those losses came to those teams, the Eagles won that, that missed holding penalty against Odell Beckham in the end zone late, and the fact that the Giants were up, I don't forget what the score was. They were up 20-3 or something like that over the Eagles early in that one. And the Panthers game, they lost to a game-winning 60-yard field goal. And it's just kind of gotten unlucky, but they've obviously missed some opportunities in several games this season. The Giants probably should be 7-6, but you coulda, woulda, shoulda. You can't really make that argument. But the Giants really should have made the playoffs this year, and they can still do it. But it's going to be difficult, and it starts with them winning 3 games, which they can do, but they got to do it, and then they need to have some other things that work out for them. But certainly getting a little bit of the benefit of the doubt with injuries coming to other teams, and it just seems like no one wants this 6 seed. The 6 seed's 6-6-1, and it's the Vikings, and the Vikings have a tough schedule. Well, actually, kind of a medium schedule down the way, but the Vikings have been super underwhelming this season in general. Moving on to some defense, because this is the highest scoring season in NFL history. So what a better time to talk about defense. That's exactly what we're going to talk about, because on Sunday and Monday Night Football, 2 of the league's most dominant defenses in the Bears and Seahawks really proved that a great defense can still win football games in 2018. And the Bears go up against the Rams, who entered the game scoring, 35 points per game, and they're 11-1, and they're dominating. And the Bears are at home, coming off a loss against the Giants, but they get Mitch Trubisky back. And this game was, really a snooze fest, as was the Monday Night Football game, which was only moderately more interesting to me, because I had my fantasy playoffs on the line, and I did win that matchup with a fourth quarter touchdown from Chris Carson. But, both of these games were very slow. The Rams offense, Todd Gurley was a potential MVP candidate. He's a guy that has, nearing 2,000 total yards on the season, I think. Yeah, he's at 1,200 rushing and 500 receiving. So decent chance of ending up with 2,000 total and 15 rushing touchdowns, 19 total touchdowns for him. And against the Bears, he goes just 11 carries for 28 yards, completely shut down. Jared Goff throws 4 interceptions. To be fair, Mitch Trubisky threw 3 interceptions, 7 total by those 2 quarterbacks. But, Jared Goff and the Rams couldn't get anything going against Chicago, and Chicago did just enough, really. They didn't do too much of their own, although they did have a great game running the football. But again, Mitch Trubisky and the offense could only put up 15 in the end, and that's not enough to win most games. But it was enough to win this one, which is funny because you consider the Rams have been in 2 of probably the most anticipated, 3 of them. 3 really of the most anticipated games of the season. The game against the Saints where they lost 45-35, and the one against the Chiefs where, they famously won 54-51, and this one was just 15-6. And then on Monday night as well, the Vikings get a garbage time touchdown near at the end there, but for the most of this game, until late fourth quarter, it was 3-0, 6-0 Seahawks. And then Seattle puts it up to 14, and then they get a fumble 6 on the next couple plays. And then Vikings go down and score all in the last, 4 minutes or so. And make that one end up 21-7, which is still a low-scoring game. Hey, Mom. Thanks for joining the show. But as I momentarily lose my train of thoughts, thanks, Mom. But yeah, a game that just had 3 points in the first 3 quarters, just 3-0. And, low-scoring games. It's good to see some of these because these are not games where – I think I can criticize the Vikings play calling. Why aren't they giving it to Dalvin Cook more? I think this whole season it's kind of strange. He only getting like 10, 11 carries a game, despite the fact that, I think he's been super productive. But, just good to see that defense can still win games is what I'm going to say. Bad news for the Eagles as they try to make that playoff push in that group of NFC teams at 6-7, 6-6-1. Carson Wentz having back issues, likely to be kept out of Week 15, their matchup against the Rams, which, is one now, especially with no Wentz, is one you can pretty much put in the bag as a Rams victory. Nick Foles will get the start, and despite, his Super Bowl heroics and whatnot, Nick Foles did not have a very good start at all the first couple weeks of this season, and now he's going to come back in, and, not the highest expectations there for Foles. And depending on what happens, this might be the end of the year for Carson Wentz. It depends. I think if they have any chance of getting him back, and they think, they still have a decent chance at the playoffs, they will. But if it's pretty unlikely, they might not want to risk it. Is what I'm hearing. And tough for Wentz because this has been, he nearly was MVP last season. This has been a pretty disappointing year. Injuries at the beginning, injuries at the end, up and down performance in the middle. This is. The Eagles could be the first Super Bowl team defending Super Bowl champion team to finish with a losing record in over a decade. That's when I should have saved for my stats of the week. We're going to see that in just a second. But my final headline, better luck next time. Brandon Marshall cut by the Saints. Brandon Marshall, the future Pro Bowl, or a future Hall of Famer, we think, wide receiver, who has never made the playoffs in his, 12-year career. Thought he might get it for the first time. Get in there for the first time when he got picked up by the Saints. Obviously, this has been a rough stretch for Brandon Marshall. Ever since he was injured with the Giants, left the Giants, he started this season. On the Seahawks. Got released from the Seahawks, picked up by the Saints. So now he's been on 2 playoff teams, and the Saints could be likely to be the number 1 seed in the NFC. But they never activated him, despite him saying that he's good to go and he's healthy and he's still can be productive. And the Saints, really, their wide receivers have not been too great this season out of Michael Thomas. But obviously, the Saints feel like they're better off without Brandon Marshall, which means this, I think, likely is probably the end of his career, and never to make the playoffs. Some years with the Broncos, Dolphins, Bears, Jets, Giants, Seahawks, Saints, but he could never do it. And I listed some teams where, all of these teams have made the playoffs since he's been in the league a few times. But, he's just on them at the wrong time. So that's tough luck. I don't really know what else to say. He's a guy with, over 12,000 receiving yards and 83 touchdowns for the career. Should have made the playoffs once, but, tough to make the playoffs in the NFL. I don't know. Some stats of the week to run through these quickly. The Saints, for the first time ever, have won back-to-back NFC South titles. And that was surprising to me because I really thought, around that 2010 or so, they must have done it because they were a playoff team, 5-6 years in a row. Every year, double-digit wins. They were, an NFC favorite for a while, but I guess the Panthers and the Falcons probably stole. The Saints were probably winning it every other year, and the Saints and the Panthers and the Falcons would steal it from them. I'm actually curious, so I'll look that up right now, as I tend to do on the show. Try to bring you the best data I can, even if that means looking it up during the show. So yeah, 2009, they finished first in the NFC South at 13-3. Then the next year they're second at 11-5. Then first at 13-3. Then they're third. Then they're second. Then they're second. So I guess they never did, which I find pretty interesting. But I mean, there you have it. This is their first time winning back-to-backs. 17-18, 11-5 last year, and they're already at 11 wins with 3 games to play this year. So Saints looking good for them to, now with that Rams loss, to potentially, if they can win out, and they do have 2 games against Carolina and 1 game against, I think, Atlanta, but we'll get some confirmation on that one as well. No, it's the Steelers. What am I talking about? I already mentioned that game earlier in the show. The Steelers in Week 16, so it will be tough for them to run the table. Steelers, Panthers, but pretty doable. They'd obviously be favored in all 3 of those games. They're the number 1 team in the league. They'll be favored against just about anybody, except maybe the Rams or the Chiefs on the road. But Saints looking good. Their offense struggled again in the first half of their matchup against the Buccaneers, actually. And they were down 14-3, I believe, in the second quarter there. But both sides of the ball really stepped it up following that loss to the Cowboys, and they ended up winning that game 28-14. So Saints' first time in franchise history with the back-to-back NFC South titles. Let's talk about some records. Aaron Rodgers sets the record for most pass attempts without an interception. That's a streak of 368 passes with no picks. And Aaron Rodgers has just 1 interception on the whole year, despite all the Packers' struggles this season. Part of that is Aaron Rodgers throws the ball away, out of bounds, rather than making a risky throw. He throws the ball out of bounds, I believe, more than twice as much as any other quarterback in the league. Obviously, some combination of offensive line issues and, receivers not being able to get open and him just being risk-averse generally. But he has not been as good as he usually is this season, especially a lot of his clutch stats have fallen off significantly, but, still does not turn the ball over. Has had a few fumbles this year, but does not throw interceptions, just 1 this year. That record is broken. That was a Tom Brady record from about 10 years ago. Another record this week being broken, Larry Fitzgerald passes Jerry Rice. And anytime you pass Jerry Rice on something, you've done something good. Larry Fitzgerald with the most receptions with 1 team in NFL history. Jerry Rice had 1,281. And that was the amount Larry Fitzgerald had entering this week, but he catches 5 balls, all in the second half, which is funny because we'll talk about the first half in 15 seconds or so. All those in the second half for the Cardinals, as they do fall 17-3 to the Lions. George Kittle, out of nowhere, has turned into a top 3 tight end in the NFL. Got to think, obviously Travis Kelce, probably number 1, but after that, the floor is open, and one of those guys is George Kittle. And I think he's got about 1,100 yards already this season, which is absurd. I'm pretty sure that's also more yards than he had in his entire college career. But just a second-year guy, George Kittle for the Niners, has quickly become the favorite quarterback of everybody the Niners have thrown out there this season, whether that be Jimmy Garoppolo, C.J. Beathard, or now Nick Mullins. And George Kittle got open early for about an 80-yarder. He seemed like he was open on every single play against the Broncos this week. Racked up 210 receiving yards in the first half alone. The NFL record for receiving yards by a tight end is Shannon Sharp's 214. So he needed just 5 yards in the second half to set the all-time record for tight end receiving yards in a game. And what does George Kittle do? He does not catch a single pass and comes up 5 yards short of that record. Wow, pretty crazy stuff. And also something fun when just looking at these standings, no team has been really awful. I think we like to talk about the Raiders have been awful, and the Cardinals have been awful, and the Jets have been awful, and the Bills have been awful. But every team's got at least 3 wins still with 3 weeks to go, and that's the first time since 2015, and only the second time in the last 15 seasons that every single team in the league has had at least 3 wins. So there's some cool facts from this week. Heading into the power rankings. And I'm pleased to announce that the Giants are not in this final group. I think the Giants have been outside. I think a couple weeks ago they cracked like 24 or something. But, even higher than that this week. As we see at the bottom, it was nice for the Cardinals getting their 3rd win, setting them up. But as the Jets win, and as the Niners win, and as the Raiders win, and as the Cardinals put up 3 points, well, back to the dungeon for you, dilly dilly. 32nd place. Raiders and Cardinals both move up a little bit. I like the Raiders offense. I think it's getting a little better. As are the Niners. The Jaguars offense is going absolutely nowhere. And then you see the Jets, the Bills. Jets beat the Bills, but I give the Bills a little bit of an edge there on a neutral field. Bengals move up because even though I expected them to get destroyed by the Chargers, they kept that one to be a 1-possession game. And really, I think probably should have. They lost, I think, by 4. And obviously, I'm not going to say it should have gone into overtime, but they did have a touchdown, a rushing touchdown by Jeff Driscoll, as I try to remember the Bengals quarterback because he's really that obscure. Turned down, called him down at the 1-yard line because they said he was giving himself up. And here's something, genius referees. No quarterback is trying to give himself up on the 1-yard line or going in for a touchdown. He dove in or he slid in. I don't remember exactly, but they ruled that because that is a rule. You're allowed to give yourself up to avoid a hit, but they ruled he was giving himself up. And this was like 10 seconds left in the half. And, it's kind of dumb. Because obviously he got in the end zone. It was originally called a touchdown, and they reversed it. I don't know how you could possibly make that call, but they did. Anyways, ended up settling for a field goal and losing that one in a 1-possession game. And then the Falcons just, they got beat up by Green Bay. Heading into the next section here, we have the Redskins. Despite the fact that they're 6-7, they're going way down. Down 6 spots because, they were down 40-0 to the Giants at home in the 3rd quarter. And that's about all the proof I need to give. Bucs falling as well after they threw a lead away against the Saints. A lot of teams moving up, though. This group of teams, this Browns, Giants, Lions, looking good in their victories, as do the Packers. And now this whole kind of group at this 5-8 win or 5 and 6 wins are all teams that are on the outside looking into the playoffs, but these are your long shot contenders here. Everybody in that last group is pretty much out. Everybody in this group is long shot contenders. Everyone in this group here, 9 through 16, are the wild card contenders basically, and this 1 through 8 group are all the teams that we expect to be in. So let's look at this 9 through 16. And we've got the Cowboys and even the Ravens, even in their loss against the Chiefs. I think they had a great performance. If it wasn't for some Pat Mahomes fourth quarter magic, a couple times they would have had that one in the bag. But I like them to move up over the Steelers, again, losing 3 in a row, including this week to the Raiders. And if you're just tuning into the show, I talked about the Steelers' schedule. Steelers are playing the Patriots and the Saints in their next 2 weeks. Could be 5 straight losses, 7-1. And I think it's going to take 9 wins to make the playoffs in the AFC. So the Steelers really, really, really in scramble mode. No James Conner. And, just not playing too well. Obviously, this list is basically just the AFC pile. The Ravens, the Steelers, the Titans, the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Vikings and the Eagles. And obviously, again, to repeat myself, the AFC, as far as the playoff picture goes, looks a lot stronger. Although when we look in the top 5, we see 3 NFC teams now because the Bears do crack the top 5 with their victory over the Rams, shutting down that offense. And when I say shutting it down, I mean shutting it down. And I am so excited to see this Chiefs-Chargers matchup on Thursday night. Getting into the predictions. Really just trying to finish 50-50 against the spread, and got 3 weeks to do it. I find it pretty funny how I just keep going up and down, and I feel like it's only 11-5 and 5 in 11 weeks, nothing in the middle. But we're going for an 11-5 this week. Starting off, Chargers, Chiefs. Chiefs at home, 3.5 favorites. That tells you basically even money on a neutral field. I would have to agree. I'm going to take the Chiefs to edge this one out 31-27, but, again, I think the Chargers don't sleep on the Chargers whatsoever. And if the Chargers do claim that 5 seed, that sets us up, and the Chiefs win this game, this sets us up for a divisional round playoff matchup between the Chiefs and the Chargers. They can play each other for a third time, which we would all love to see, because I do think the Chargers will beat the Steelers/Ravens, whoever comes out of that AFC North and gets the 4 seed. Texans and Jets. Texans finally, their 9-game winning streak was stamped with a loss, and it's just because my dad was there. Going up against the Jets, and the Jets actually beat the Bills last week, but they're not going to have that repeat performance this time. Jets and Giants are both home, by the way. Playing each other. Hold on. Sunday. Is this a Saturday? Hold on. Now I'm losing my mind. Because I just read an article that said MetLife Stadium was going to have neutral painted end zones this week. Was that not for this week? Because how? If the Giants are both, they can't be both at home this weekend. What's going on here? Oh, you're right. I do have the time mixed up here. This is a Saturday game. Texans-Jets. So, yeah, it's true. The Jets are home on Saturday afternoon, 4:30 Eastern Time, 3:30 Central. And the Giants are home on noon on Sunday, which is why, they're having to scramble to paint. They're just going to paint the end zones neutrally over having to redo the paint job, twice. But that's very interesting. We have a Saturday football game. And I guess it's because no college football this Saturday. So why not throw it on Saturday? And it'll be the Jets against the Texans. And I do like the Texans to come out with the win. All right, Broncos, Browns. Browns favored by 3 just because they're at home. But I'm riding the Browns train once again. Got the upset pick last week against Carolina. And why not make it 2 in a row? I really don't consider this to be too much of an upset. I guess it's called one. But, yeah, give me the Browns to do it again. And, Demarius Randall. Or was it Demarius Randall or was it Jarvis Landry? I forget. I think it was Demarius Randall, said that the Browns think they're a playoff team, and obviously they're not going to make the playoffs unless they run the table and get super lucky. But they feel like a playoff team, and to be honest, I'm not sure they've been quite a playoff team, but they've played very well, and they've had a lot of close losses. You can think of the game against the Raiders and the Steelers. So definitely a team that could have been better than where the record currently stands. Cardinals taking on the Falcons in this week's edition of the game no one wants to see. Because I don't know what happened to the Falcons. And then the Cardinals, I don't think the Cardinals have done anything of note this season except for, every couple weeks Larry Fitzgerald sets some new kind of record. But going to take the Falcons here at 20-13. Especially that offense has been super poor. I'm trying to remember. I saw some cool stats about the Falcons, ineptness on offense. They've had the fewest amount of offensive possessions in the NFL this year, which says something about pace of play, I guess. I think they have the fewest third down conversions or something. Don't take my word on that one. But again, I think the Falcons will actually get a win here, but, just because it's against Arizona. Have the Bucks playing the Ravens. And, you see that Ravens defense looked pretty good. I'm going to take them to win 26-21. And the Chiefs still put up a fair amount of points, but you can slow them down whatsoever, and they did for the majority of that game. Definitely on the up and up. Lions playing the Bills. Bills are favored again somehow. I picked the Bills when they were favored last week. It did not work out so well. So I'm going to pick the Lions this time, and I'm really hoping this season will be over as soon as possible, just to put the Bills out of their misery. Because this is a team, I don't know. Josh Allen somehow is running the ball like Michael Vick 2.0. But other than that, I don't know, man. Packers taking on the Bears. And the Packers are going to lose to the Bears. 28-20 will be my call. Bears getting the 10 wins. And Bears are just hoping that the Saints or the Rams can, lose again, so that they can really try to get themselves in this conversation for first-round bye. Right now, they're 2 games back. But if they win out and, some things could happen, they just beat the Rams. So definitely going to be rooting for some Rams losses, will Chicago fans. Raiders, Bengals, taking the taking the Raiders. So I messed that one up. But no, I'm taking the Raiders. Once again, I thought their game was going to be good against these Steelers. That was going to be close, and I was right. That was one of only the 5 spreads last week that I got right. And even though the Bengals had a good showing against the Chargers, I do think the Raiders are going to pull this one out for their first 2-game win streak in the Gruden era. Because it feels like all the teams that are trying to tank don't know how to tank. Cowboys, Colts, this will be a very good game. Both of these teams have been red hot, with the exception of the Colts shutout against the Jaguars 2 weeks ago. But basically, over the last 5-6 weeks or so, both of these teams have been super good. Really like this game. I'm going to take the Cowboys to win it 26-23, but could easily see this one going either way. Somehow the Jaguars are favored by 7. Of course, it's just because they happen to be playing the Redskins. And let me look up, because if I'm the Redskins, I would be starting Josh Johnson. Let's take a look. Have they announced this? I assume they've announced their starting quarterback for Week 15. And Redskins. Yeah, it is going to be Josh Johnson moving back into that starter role for the first time in basically a decade for him since Tampa Bay. But yeah, 4th starting quarterback for the Redskins this season, and that's not a recipe for success. I don't think I need to tell anybody that. And I do think they will drop one this week, although this is going to be a low-scoring game, I think, for sure. 17-13. It might not even go that high, as both of these teams are really struggling. It'll be Josh Johnson against Cody Kessler. I'm pretty sure that's not a quarterback matchup anybody would have thought would have happened this season, but here we are. Dolphins, Vikings. Dolphins still getting no love, despite the fact that they're 7-6. I think this game will be close, probably a little closer than the 7, but I do think the Vikings will pull this one out, because they have to pull one of these out, don't they? Come on. Titans, Giants, another close game, but at this point, even if the Giants have a slimmer hope at making the playoffs, I'm just going to go Giants out, and I'm not even going to make any excuses about it. Ultimately, I do think the Giants are probably playing better than all of the other teams in contention with them for the wild card in the NFC. It's just that the Giants started out 1-7. But I will take the Giants 27-24 in this one. Seahawks against the Niners. Could be close, but I don't really think so. Nick Mullins, though, is looking pretty decent for the Niners. I don't think it'll get him the starting job next year or anything, although who knows? Maybe they could trade one of their quarterbacks, Garoppolo or Mullins. Not quite sure about that, but the Seahawks are rolling. Had a tough start early, but, they're another one of these teams. Talk about the Colts, talk about the Cowboys. Teams that are just rolling right now. And I like them to lock up a wild card spot this week at 9-5. Patriots, Steelers. Steelers really are going to need to win this one, or next week against the Saints. This one is at home, so this is probably a better chance, especially considering the Patriots actually are only 3-4. I believe it is 3-4 on the road this season and 6-0 at home. But I do think they will move up to 4-4 and send the Steelers farther into their downward spiral. Will be the Steelers' 4th straight loss. And then Eagles-Rams. By the way, there are 10 or 11 games on at noon or 1 p.m. Eastern on Sunday. It's more than usual. Only 2 games in the afternoon. It's 3? Wait, hold on. I'm losing my mind. Give me a second here. I'm losing my mind because I made a note, and I guess it's because the Texans game is on Saturday. Maybe that makes things a little different. But when I was making the show, I was pretty stunned by how many games we had on at noon. Let's see. Oh, hold on. The Browns-Broncos game is a Saturday game as well. We have 2 games on Saturday. I guess I was not paying attention, but then I guess we do have a normal amount. Well, 9. We have 9 games on at noon. And yeah, just 2. Just 2 games. Because I guess I forgot to change the times on some of these games. Sorry for the mistakes. But anyways, we do have 2 Saturday games and then 9 early Sunday games. Just 2 Sunday afternoon games. I'm trying to process this. I apologize. The Sunday and the Monday night. But anyways, we do have this game, which is actually the Sunday nighter, the Eagles-Rams. And on this one, we have a Rams 30-17 victory because I don't think Nick Foles is going to do too much. And the Rams offense has to get themselves back on track. I mean, if Dak Prescott can throw for 450 against the Eagles, Jared Goff might be in for 800. And then finally, this is a Monday night game. Saints taking on the Panthers, and I like these Saints here. And I will give the points to the Panthers, and 28-20 will be my final call on this one. Final game of Week 15. And I think that win for the Saints should clinch them a first-round bye. So those were my picks for Week 15. Let me know if you got anything for me in the next minute or two. This is Connor Groel for Top Level Sports and Direct Snap, the NFL talk show of Top Level Sports. Just 2 weeks left of the regular season and 2 more shows after this one. And then maybe some playoff shows, although they'd have to be pretty quick. Not a ton to talk about when we just got 4 games. So yep, that is the show for this week. Thank you everybody tuning in on Facebook Live and everyone watching late or on YouTube or the Top Level Sports website. But I don't see anything coming in. So we'll get back at it once again next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central. Try to get back to that normal schedule. And I will see you again next week. So I am Connor Groel once again signing out, and see you next week.